Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to our London system series. So in this series we're following this very nice opening from White's perspective, and today we're continuing the series again with the London system against the Slav Defense. So in my previous video we have covered already the London versus the Slav, but today with a different line, with a more aggressive setup by Black with the bishop to g4 idea. The bishop to g4 idea is basically a pinning idea, or an idea of Black to create some mess, to create a double pawn structure. We'll see, of course, in the continuation of the video what's all about. And again, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but please watch the series from the beginning, from the introduction video, then part 1, part 2, and part 3, and so on, if you want to really get a better understanding of this video. So, because I will not repeat everything that I've mentioned in every video, so that's why it's very important to watch this series in a row, and I think we can cover many lines and you could have a good preparation as white. So let's check out now again the semi-Slav or the Slav defense setup with the move bishop to g4. What are the strategical ideas and how you should counterplay the setup. So as said, d4, d5, knight to f3, knight to f6, bishop to f4. This is now our London system setup. We have c6, the Slav defense. This move order I have explained in my previous video. Now e3 and now bishop to g4. This is a pinning idea, of course, of Blacks. The idea is to prevent white to get this e5 square. It's a very nice strategical idea here of Blacks, because Black in some occasion could give up the light square bishop for the knight on f3 and then cement the position on light squares, and could have again a great compact position. So as always, the main strategy in this setups, we see this is the so-called static center setup. It means the pawn structure in the center is static. Even if Black, for instance, plays something like c5, then after d takes c5, Black risks an isolated pawn situation. The same thing happens if, for instance, White forces a position with the potential e4 move. If we force it too much, then we could also risk in some occasions an isolated pawn. So that's why we call this position a static position. We don't want to play pawn moves in the center. Our main goal in this types of setup is the potential outpost. From White's perspective, of course, it's an outpost on the square e5. From Black's perspective, it's an outpost on the square e4. So that's why this bishop to g4 idea is already a tricky idea of Black's. He wants to stop our main goal, our main outpost on e5. Now my recommendation is again to play the move c4. I've mentioned it also in my previous analyzed part of the London system series. When your opponent leaves the protection of the b7 pawn, we should really break the positional light squares and try a queen to b3 idea and attack the b7 weakness. So here it's an instructive gameplay by Vlatko Kovacevic against let me see, Hans Bohm, and all of these games will be in the description below. So now Vlatko Kovacevic immediately challenges Black's center. Here Black tries this fortress. This is the usual setup, and now we're trying again our move queen to b3. Here queen to b6, we have c5. I've also recommended this line. After queen to a5, we have knight to c3, and now comes the tricky part of Black's. It's the move b6. The problem now of White is that we cannot protect anymore the pawn with the move b4. We would love to recapture here with the pawn, and you see now, if you allow your opponent to play b takes c5, then d takes c5, you see, and our pawn is attacked. On the other hand, what you shouldn't also do is to play c takes b6. After a takes b6, you see Black is now creating a very nice battery. Black will continue the game with the move knight to e4, and will have also some tactical threats on the a file. So I think Black is slightly better. Black has still opportunities to break even further the position with another c5 move with the pawn on c5, and I think it's a worse position here for White. So that's why here comes the tricky part of this opening. If your opponent plays the move b6, now we should proceed with the move knight to e4. We got out of the pin, that's the most important thing, and now here bishop to f5. If b takes a5 happens in an early stage of the game, that's not good here for Black, because we have now the opportunity to play queen to b7. That's our main goal. As I said, the b7 weakness. After knight to e4, we can simply take it. After knight to c3, now comes the tricky part, also knight to c6. That's the main goal. After knight to c6, queen to c6, and now followed with bishop to d6. So That's why you see it's not easy immediately to take the pawn on c5 by black. Black has to make further development and then finally break the position with b takes c5. So here bishop to f5, getting out of the attack of the knight. We have a3, bishop to e7, and now bishop to e2, castling, and now g4. That's the main problem of blacks when black plays the bishop too early. The bishop can be really an object of our attack. Here, after potential bishop to e4 that was played in the game, we have f3, bishop to g6, and now g4. Here, finally, black tried the move b takes c5, but now comes h5, and we have trapped the bishop here after queen to b6, queen takes b6, and now h takes g6. The bishop is trapped. Even if in this position h6 happens, here, if you prevent, then we can simply take knight takes g6, and we can create further weaknesses. The pawn structure in front of the king is messed up. We can even try h5, even g5 here is a possibility. Knight takes g6 followed with bishop to d3. So you see this b6 idea, which seemed to me sometimes like a dangerous idea, is basically not good. Here you have, I think, a great counterplay. So let's see now another example. What you could also do, it's a game, it's a great game played by Nihal Sarin. Here the young prodigy played really an incredible game in the London system, d4, d5. The game will also be in the description below, so you can analyze the whole games. Knight to f3, c6, bishop to f4, knight to f6, e3, and now again bishop to g4. Here Nihal Sarin plays the move knight to d2. You can choose knight to d2 or immediately the c4. The same idea will apply. Here e6 and now h3. You saw the problems when your opponent gets with the bishop back, when your opponent retreats with the bishop, then the bishop can be again an object of our constant attack. So that's why here David Navarra was Nihal Sarin's opponent. He played bishop to f3, knight to f3, and the good part of this setup of Nihal Sarin is after the move knight to d2, we have grabbed again the knight with another knight and still have our powerful control of the e5 square. That was the main goal. So here bishop to d6 and now knight to e5. If bishop to e5 happens, still we have a good control of the e5 square. If we get challenged by knight to d7, we can simply retreat, play bishop to d3, castling, and finally break the position with the move c4. That would be, I think, a comfortable game here for white. So after the move knight to e5, queen to b6 was played, and now here Nihal Sarin prepared really a beautiful tactic, and I really want you to know this possibility. Here rook to b1, and now after queen to a5, it seems so that something went wrong for young prodigy, because he has to play now c3, and after queen to a1, a2, black has grabbed the pawn, but now comes really a great tactical shot, knight to f7. Here if you try king to f7, then we'll simply take the bishop. So that's why Navarra played bishop takes f4, and now knight takes h8. So we have grabbed some material, we're up the exchange. Although this knight is a little bit in danger, the knight cannot escape, but what we want to do is create some further attacks here against these two weak pawns. So bishop to h6, bishop to d3, and now knight to d7. We have h4, g6 played by Navarra, and now g4. We have bishop to g7, and now knight takes g6, h takes g6, and bishop to g6. So we have grabbed some more pawns and the rook for two minor pieces, which I think is good. Our bishop on g8 is really a great piece, and the most important thing is we have prevented also black here from castling. Now we have two connected pass pawns, and I hope you realize this is now a completely winning endgame here for white. So I'm not going to show you the whole game. I hope you realize this tactical threat, and that this queen to a5 is not so dangerous. Even if you lose some pawns, you have great counterattack possibilities after the move bishop to d6. So let's see now another example. It was a game played by Kirill Georgiev against Riho Lihua. Here d4, d5, knight to f3, c4, c6, bishop to f4, bishop to g4, and now e3. Here black tried again knight to f6, and now again the same idea, c4, e6, knight to c3. We have knight to h5. Again comes this idea of blacks to chase the bishop a little bit on f4. Again, this continuation shouldn't worry us, because we can play bishop to g3, or in some occasions we could stay with the bishop on f4, but I'm recommending you to stay with the bishop on f4 when we pass through here with the pawn on c5. Then the position is further blocked, and after potential e takes f4, still we could have a great grip on dark squares. I've explained it in my previous video of the Slav Defense, of the London versus the Slav Defense. So here you see, I don't think that after knight takes g3, h takes g3, that black has here really a comfortable game, because we'll simply play bishop to d3, attacking the h7 weakness, play again queen to b3, knight to e5, again our main strategical ideas. Then even c5 is a possibility. So you see this chasing the bishop sometimes of black's, the Starkville bishop, it seems like a dangerous idea, but I don't think that really you have trouble. So here knight to d7, bishop to d3, bishop to e7, queen to c2. So black didn't challenge here the b2 pawn with queen to b6. Now, in my opinion, queen to c2 is perfectly fine, as we're building this very nice queen and bishop battery, and we are aiming this weak h7 square. In the game, bishop takes f3 was played, and now g takes f3. Okay, you can say now our pawn structure is messed up, but it's really not so, because we have a great powerful pawn central control. Even e4 now is a possibility. And again, knight takes g3, h takes g3, we see we have again a very nice attack. e4 now, e5, f4, f5, g4, g5 is here really a possibility. So we can create really this pawn storm. And in the game, after g takes f3, here black tried g6 to build this battery, this fortress on light squares. And now queenside castling is, I think, the great solution of this position, because now after queen to a5, king to b1, and now kingside castling, we have now e4. You see the pawn storm, the bishops are aiming all over the board. I think even in this position, white has a dominant position, although the evaluation here is about equal. But I hope you realize, I really think that this position is playable for white. We can still make progress even with f4, f5, great attacking possibilities in the game. Black tried knight to b6, knight to e2. We have d takes c4, bishop to c4, knight takes, queen to c4, and still we can really improve the position. We have a great pawn central control, although these are double pawns, as I said, but still we can push them further. We have queen to b4, queen to c2, we have bishop to f6, and now f4. We're simply centralizing towards our opponent's king. We have queen to e7, and now knight to g3. Very nice move. If you take knight takes g3, h takes g3 again, not f takes g3. Although we are improving a little bit the pawn structure is not doubled, but the main tactical idea is simply to open the h file. That wasn't played in the game, but after knight to g3, here knight to g7 was played, f3, rook to d7, and now h4. The problem is now you cannot take bishop to h4. You see, you get queen to h2. There are again some clear tactical targets here on h7. You're going to be checkmated, so that's why this doesn't work here. After the move rook to d8, knight to e2. Again, a tricky idea here by white, because he allowed now the pawn. He allowed now black to take the pawn, but now rook to g8. Both of these rooks are really aiming. f6 is so far not a possibility, as the bishop would be again hanging. So in the game, bishop to f6 was played, and now a3. Bishop takes f6, e5, pardon me, f takes e5, and now c5, trying to break the pawn shape, but now queen to c1, again aiming against the weak h7 square, again trying some checkmate threats on h7. So that's why h5. We have knight to f4, we have rook takes d4, but now comes really the great tactic. Knight takes h5, knight takes h5, queen to h6. The threat is, of course, rook takes h5. In the game, queen to f8 was played, and now queen takes h5. We don't want to trade off the queens, of course, because we want to still have our attack. We want to deliver checkmate. Rook to d1. The idea is, of course, to deflect the rook from the defense. Then g takes h5 would happen, so that's why king to a2, queen to g7, and now queen to g5, rook to d2, and now rook to h3. After a couple moves, black resigned the game. So, as I said, in these types of setups, after the move bishop to g4, you see that this bishop can be an object of your attack. You could create again an attack against the weak b7 pawn. If your opponent gives up the bishop in an early stage of the game, then like in this position, you should also consider to queenside castle sometimes. So I think this bishop to g4 idea seems in the beginning like a dangerous idea of blacks, but you saw there are really some great counterattack possibilities. So at the end of the video, here is chess puzzle, but it's not a puzzle. The game will go on after a couple of moves. It's not that we can win this game immediately. But I've prepared this chess position here now for you, and I want you to now to find really the best next move here for white. I'll give you the solution of this position also in this video. It's not about that you can really win this game immediately, like in 3 or 4 moves, but this is a common position of the London system when you get this very nice outpost on e5. And here I really need you now to see really the best next move. It's really a great move which opens the position, and I think it can happen to you many times. And pause the video, take your time, try to see really the best continuations. When we always evaluate positions in chess, we should always evaluate the strength of minor pieces. Here the knight on e5 is perfectly fine. The bishop on d3, okay, it is blocked out because the position is simply blocked out. So although this bishop doesn't have a good activity, but at least it attacks the pawn, the knight on e4. The knight on d2 is okay, could be maybe improved to f3. Of course, it could be better. The bishop on h4 is perfectly fine, as it prevents some ideas by the queen to get somehow into the game. The queen is perfectly fine. The rook is perfectly fine. This rook could get some kind of improvement, but now, when basically there's no clear improvement of the piece, it's time really to consider for pawn move. And here Vlatko Kovacevic played this game. Vlatko Kovacevic was the player of our first example of this video. He played the move g4. That's a common, really a common London system move. This move g4 is possible to create this kind of a pawn breakthrough, because the pawn structure in the center and the center itself is really static. It's blocked out. Nothing can happen in the center. We shouldn't bother about the center. When the center is blocked, we should always consider a pawn move, a breaking move on the flank. So you see all our pieces are coordinated to the king side. They are not coordinated to the queen side. So we shouldn't really watch for some attacks like a4, b4 or similar ideas. Now g4, because our king is already on h1, and now it's time to open the g file. So in the game, bishop to e8 was played, g takes f5, e takes f5, and now rook to g1. You see how Vladimir Kovacevic gets new activity just because of this very nice g4 move. So bishop to e7, again we have this relation between bishops and pawns. You see our bishop is challenged. What should we do? We shouldn't retreat, we should really take it, because after queen to e7, again I'm pointing out, really many of these pawns are on light squares. Black is continuing the game with a light square bishop. Our bishop could be even traded for a knight, and black would continue the game, I think, with a little bit bad bishop position here. So rook to g2, doubling up on the g file, rook to g1, and now bishop to h5. Here again, pause the video and try to find now the best next move here for Vladimir Kovacevic. Here Vladimir Kovacevic played the move bishop takes e4, sacrificing the queen, because if you try bishop to e2, then rook takes g7, and now we have rook to g1. Pardon me, rook to g8. After rook to g8, knight to f7 is checkmate. So great tactic that Kovacevic has prepared. After bishop to e4, we have f takes e4, and now again a similar idea. Rook takes g7, king to h8, and now queen to g2. Very nice battery. Here bishop to g6, knight takes g6, h takes g6, and now rook takes g6. In this position, Kovacevic's opponent resigned. So you see, I think we already know much about this London system. We got really some clear ideas so far in the series. We'll continue to follow this very nice opening, also against the Queen's Indian, the Queen's Gambit, the client setups, against Benoni setups, King's Indian setups, Grunfeld setups. So many of the setups that black can choose, and we're trying to really cover as many of these possible sidelines that can happen to you, because I want you to have a really good preparation as white. So okay, I hope that you realize these ideas, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented videos from this very nice opening. Here's the link, and if you have troubles to play as black, check out my hyper accelerated Dragon Sicilian defense series as a nice defense against e4, and my King's Indian defense series as a nice defense against the d4. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.